So, Chinese financial woes continue to pile up as local governments are facing severe financial difficulties, which is leading to widespread delays in paying their workers. Government workers from Nanchang, which is in the Jiangxi province, are experiencing delays in their salaries for the first time since 2008. Several other provinces are reporting difficulties as well, reflecting a nationwide issue here. Now, the financial strain is due to high levels of debt among local governments, with all but one of China's 31 provinces reporting deficits in 2022 and again in 2023. Now, the economic challenges are exacerbated by the costs associated with the CCP's previous zero COVID policies, as well as a severe downturn in the real estate market. All of this has depleted local government revenues because they invest mostly in real estate. Meanwhile, the leaders in those municipalities are being incentivized to continuously report good numbers or incur punitive measures. In response to these financial challenges, local authorities have been forced to cut spending, which is affecting public services and worker salaries. Now, the province of Guizhou has even requested a bailout from the CCP to avoid defaulting on its debts and fulfill payroll requirements. Now, despite China's reported economic growth, which many are skeptical of, the financial instability at the local level continues to impact workers and public services, signaling a significant challenge for the CCP as they try to prop their economy up. The central government has announced measures to support local economies, but there's a lot of skepticism about if these are going to work because these initiatives are basically local government welfare programs without any kind of reimbursement. And it is not just impacting government workers. The real estate sector's essential collapse, which is exemplified by the bankruptcy of China's largest real estate firm, Evergrande Group, have impacted construction workers. Many of these workers lack formal contracts and have faced severe delays in payment, and even some have worked for weeks only to be let go with no pay for doing work for the work they've done. Now, the high youth unemployment means that there's a large pool of desperate workers that China can leverage. These Chinese companies who are trying to avoid a cascade of bankruptcies are just screwing over these workers by not paying their wages. And these workers who do not get contracts, and even if they do have no means to fight in court, are just showing up to these jobs hoping to get paid. And if they do, great. If they don't, I guess it's oh well for them. And this has added to the unrest in China. Since August of last year, labor protests in China have surged, particularly before the Lunar New Year. Rights groups have noted a significant increase in these demonstrations, with the number of labor protests tripling in the last year. Data from the Freedom House's China Dissent Monitor revealed 777 labor protests from September to December of last year, which is a humongous rise in just 4 months from the 245 in the entirety of the previous year. Now, additionally, there's been reports from China Labor Bulletin that have shown that just in January, 183 labor protests took place. That means they're on pace to eclipse even the highest levels of previous years. And most of these protests come from the construction and real estate sectors. Now, incidentally, some of the uptick in Chinese immigration to the U.S. can be attributed to this high youth unemployment rate, the lack of jobs in China, and employers not paying wages. So these Chinese workers are seeing the U.S. as a bastion of progress in the developing world. But the reality is China should no longer be in this developing world stage at this point. Nonetheless, the fallout from the gross mismanagement of the world's second largest economy is playing out in front of us on a weekly basis. It doesn't seem like a week can go by before we see some sort of message about the Chinese stock market losing huge amounts of value, the collapse of the real estate market, workers not being paid, huge unemployment, etc., etc. Make no mistake, this is not a good thing for the world. China was on pace to surpass the US at some point, but will never reach that point. And as for the US, it is positioned to weather the storm here. And those partner nations that tie themselves to the US, such as Canada, Mexico, Japan, and some of the European nations, will reap somewhat of a US windfall here. But nonetheless, this massive Chinese downturn, this massive shift away from China, and a lot of the problems that China is having are going to have a ripple effect through the global economy. It's just who is positioned the best to weather that. And unfortunately, a lot of countries are tied at the hip to China due to bad deals and decisions made over the past few decades.